What is up, Honey Badger Nation? Man, this is John Kitchens, and welcome to episode 139 of Expert Mentors Live. I am super excited for today's episode as we have the one and only Sir Wally Bressler on with us. And,
greetings.
Greetings.
Thanks for having me.
Man, I really appreciate you jumping in. I know you're out and about and traveling a little bit, and I'm excited for you to jump in and
thank you.
Share your wisdom and help folks overcome call reluctance and, just pick up the damn phone.
Easier said than done in some cases, but that's really what we're trying to get at, is just getting to pick up the damn phone and change your life by changing other people's lives.
Yeah, buddy. And, I'll let you kind of share a little bit, but, I've had the opportunity to know you. You coached our team in the L back in the day, and you coached Michael Reese's team as well. And then when the fellas started the coaching organization coaching program, you were a number uno and master coach to all. And with you and old Cuzzy Cliff, man, just for me, having you guys as mentors and really taking me under your wing was it was invaluable. So I really appreciate you for that, and really excited kind of where you're at with things and what's important to you now, and the skills that you have, not only on the coaching side, but here as it relates to sales reluctancy and all things related.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I appreciate it. That was a very generous and gracious introduction. I appreciate it. It's been awesome getting to know you over the last, 15 years now? I've known you 15 years. That's really,
jeez. Yeah.
Yeah, you're still in your 20s when I met you, for God's sakes. Truth be told.
That's a true story.
That's a true story, right? So, but I consider myself extremely blessed just to have been connected with Jay, Mike, you, and all the things we've learned together over the years and the stuff we've worked on together. So I've been at the right place since 2006, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. And it's been a heck of a ride, and I know really excited to jump in with you today and really add a ton of value back to, Honey Badger Nation and really, the community as a whole, how, this really important function of the process is critical, and how so many agents really struggle with it. How many people struggle with it?
Yeah, salespeople of all kinds. I want to preface what we're going to talk about today is this isn't just for people that are having trouble picking up the phone and making sales calls. This is for people that want to recruit but haven't been able to pick the phone up to recruit people. For people who are who want to be doing video on social media but don't want to get in front of a camera. For people who need to be calling their past clients in sphere to building relationships with them. So it's whatever one area it affects, it's affecting all of those areas. So, my hope is that everybody would see this, because I really want to help everybody. I know not everybody's going to see it, but if you see this today and it strikes a chord with you for you, then great. If it strikes a chord with you for somebody else, pass it along. Because the goal here, my passion is I want like 100,000. Because look, 40% of the salespeople on the face of the planet suffer from some form of sales call reluctance. 80% of first-year salespeople are end up out of the business because they have sales call reluctance. And while it's not, I can't explain this. It's easier to fix than you would think it would be, but it takes some work. But if you can do it, it's going to change your life forever. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so.
So we group all things in there from a sales call reluctance. So I loved how you preface that, right? Because I know there are tons of agents out there that are struggling with, man, how do I engage that conversation with agent attraction? How do I engage, I want to do video, but they just have that barrier. So what is sales call reluctancy? Unpack that. Let's get real clear on what that means.
Right. So, loosely defined, basically, it's just a psychological and emotional block that we've created for ourselves for one of two reasons: either because we experienced some sort of trauma as a child or a younger person, or the other thing is we created, I call them, well, Tony Robbins and Deepak Chopra called them that, but they were called hidden identities, where we look at an instance or an example of something that happens and we create a belief system around it. Like, for instance, somebody walks up to you and says, geez, you're big. Well, you can take that as being fat. You can take that as being strong, right? Or, you know, for instance, for me, like, you know, my parents, I don't know, how can I explain this? You know, my dad didn't graduate from college until, I mean, he got his associates. I think he graduated later in life. My mom graduated from college, but, you know, when they first got married, my mother was making like $9,500 a year as a teacher back in 1967. So we didn't have a lot of money, you know, and so lived in a neighborhood, had a good house and stuff, but we didn't have a lot of money. So I convinced myself that I was poor, because I'd see all the kids in school with Levi's and Nikes and Timberlands and nice ski coats, and I had whatever we could get at Sears for shoes and jeans and, you know, the kind of coat that you'd wear if you were 90. And, you know, so I just convinced myself that I was poor. And so I would look at people who had money, and it wasn't necessarily jealousy, but I started getting literally a physical reaction to being around people. Like, I'd get sick to my stomach because I felt there was such a difference between other people and me. And so, I mean, it really was the beginning of a very problematic addiction to money that I've had for a good portion of my life. And when I say good portion, probably like 35 years, good portion, long time. You know what I'm saying? And that was just because of what I created in my head and nothing else. So anyway, so, you know, we faced the trauma, or, you know, it could be anything else. Like, somebody, you have an accent, somebody made fun of you for it. Somebody in your family told you you're stupid and that you could never do anything, and they reinforce that for you. Unfortunately, maybe you were beaten as a child, sexually abused, or there was something sent your way that your brain was really overcome with. And then what happens is one of two things happens. Either, like Frank Shamrock, you know, Frank Shamrock, the MMA fighter.
Yeah.
So Frank's on this side, and we'll put myself on this side. So on this side, something happens and it scares you so badly that you literally turn into a puddle, and you live in fear and anxiety and scarcity, and you don't do anything you can think of to put yourself in a position to be out there where you could be made fun of, hurt again, or anything like that, right? And so you go forward in your life like that. And then there's guys like Frank Shamrock, and I think Lewis Howes talks about this too, where that happens and you're like, you know what, F you will never hurt me again. And everything I do going forward is just going to be me proving to you that you can't do that for me. You know what I'm saying? And so Frank Shamrock becomes an MMA fighter and beats the crap out of people for a living. Lewis Howes builds a huge business and just keeps on going and going. But at the end of the day, what happens is we all meet back in the middle, because at some point we've got to make peace with what happened. But in the meantime, if we're the person like I am, where that trauma happened, that information happened, whatever it was, and then you basically reinforced it in your brain and you told yourself that stuff for 10, 20, 30 years, now you're at a point where you're not going to pick up the phone and make phone calls or get on a video or recruit for fear of rejection, for fear of judgment, for fear of anything that would cause you pain, because you've convinced yourself that you're not worthy of it, that you don't deserve it, and that you know, that success is not to be yours. Okay, so that, I mean, that's more than loosely defined. I mean, that's been my research, conversation with therapists, videos, you know, all kinds of stuff.
So what led you down that path to really uncover that and learn about it? And then, you know, I think the second part to that is trying to figure out how to solve that challenge.
Yeah. So, you know, I posted a video a while back, and I think a lot of people saw it. I'm just going to kind of draw from it a little bit, just so that people can understand, I guess, why I'm so passionate about it. You know, I preface my comments with this. You know, I love my parents. You know what I'm saying? I mean, they both passed. My dad died when he was 49. My mom died when she was 64. You know, they both suffered from anxiety. They both smoked cigarettes. They drank for a while. You know, they were overweight. And so they had issues themselves, you know, from their upbringing. And basically our upbringing is kind of what our parents' upbringing was and what their parents' upbringing was. It all, you know, trickles down. And so, you know, my grandmother was really hard on my dad especially. And so, you know, they did the best they could. But, you know, my mom worked. My dad didn't quite work when I was born. So for the first 4 or 5 years of my life, I was with my dad every day. You know, he drank during the day, and he tried to be the best dad that he could. But, you know, I started getting, you know, punished, and like he would belittle me and talk down to me when I was like 3, 4, 5. And then one of the punishments would be that I would be sent to bed without dinner, which not so good when you're 3, 4, 5, you know. And so by the time that I was 6, you know, I had already had an issue with food. And in fact, I think I told the story my very first day of first grade, I actually ate my lunch at snack time because I was afraid I wasn't going to be able to eat my lunch. And so, that's kind of when I started sneaking food and having anxiety. And then, I'd get punished for doing things that I didn't even do wrong. And then, so I started being I was a liar because I lied to protect myself. And then it just kind of took off from there. I was sexually abused when I was 10. And then I started looking at pornography consistently when I was 11. And then I started engaging in sexual activity when I was 12. So all these things happened while I'm in mostly my formative years of my life. And all of those things were killers for self-esteem, right? For self-love, for self-belief. And, I pretty much hated myself for most of my life as a result of that. And back then, there wasn't a lot of the systems and strategies and programs and parental advice and therapy that goes on today. So all that stuff got left unchecked, and I was left to my own devices to figure out what to do with it, and I didn't figure out what to do with it, and so so here's what happens is I kind of explain this, your brain is like a librarian and a farmer. So your subconscious's job is to keep you alive and safe and to make sense of everything that's happened. So literally every night when you go to bed, it's part librarian. It's saying, okay, here's everything that happened today. Let's take it and we'll put it on the shelf and organize it, right? But if you can't make sense of something like a trauma, then it just kind of leaves it on the floor because it doesn't know where to put it. And then as you your life goes on, you keep tripping over it because this is unresolved, right? And then it's part farmer. So, from 12, 13, and then I got bullied mercilessly, like horribly, by a bunch of kids. And, my parents never taught me to protect myself. So there were kids half my size that would bully me and pick on me, and I'd let them, And so what happened was your brain's like, okay, so I'm telling myself I'm not good, that I'm useless, that I don't deserve things, and I'm not worthy of success. And so it's like a gardener. And I think, what's his name? Earl Nightingale talks about this, like your brain is like the most fertile soil on the face of the planet. Whatever you plant in it, it's going to grow. So if you tell yourself for 30, 35 years that I'm useless and I'm not worthy, full of doubt and stuff like that, it's going to pull the weeds, it's going to water it, it's going to fertilize it, and that's what's going to grow. So you've got an unresolved issue on one side that trips you up, and then you've got all these negative belief systems that get to the point where you really aren't going to put yourself anywhere where you need to be in most cases because you're afraid to. So for me, that's what happened. And then, part of my defense mechanism as I grew older was to be a nice guy, to be funny, to be outgoing, and, hey, this is a great fun guy, and so everybody thought it, and I still am, but I'm this gregarious, outgoing guy. Everybody who did an MLM wanted me to join them. Everybody who had sales jobs. And, it's funny, I got a sales job my junior year. There was a woman I went to school with, her name was Lynn, and her dad hired me. You'd be great at this. I'm like, sure. We go out to lunch every day. He'd give me lead cards. And I made one sale, in 3 months. He's like, he goes, this isn't working, is it? I said, no, it's not. Because I would go to pick up the phone to call people. I'd be sweaty, you know what I'm saying? And I had no clue back then. And so I got into college. I was offered sales jobs galore. Didn't take them. My parents were like, steady job, steady job, steady job. Get a job with salary, health insurance, benefits, something to count on. So I went to work in the mutual fund industry, and I was there for about 9 years. And while I was there, I got exposure to some sales techniques and some strategies. And then I went to a Dale Carnegie course on how to do public speaking. I was a lot of Tony Robbins, a lot of Zig Ziglar, and so all of a sudden I was realizing that, hey, wait a second, wait a second, what I'm saying? Like I started thinking differently, and I was doing sales competitions, I was winning winning bonuses, and I was doing calls and getting promoted. And so in 1998, my mentor's wife, I was a good friend with her, and she's like, hey, you should go and sell houses, and I'm like, oh, okay. So I got my license in 2 weeks, and then I left. And, I became a real estate agent, and then my first 14 months with what I was given for tools and training and what I had basically worked through, I sold 72 houses in my first 14 months in the business. It was good for about $280,000 in GCI. I'm like, whoa, look at this. I don't want to say it's
Game
bad.
changer.
I don't want to say it's bad news when it took me, I was 30, but hey, better late than never.
Yeah. Yeah. And, getting plugged into that system. So was that what helped overcome that reluctance that you had in previous sales, by being in the right environment really helped push through to have that success?
I think it was a combination of the reinforcement over the 10 years that I was in the mutual fund industry for, work on this, putting me in position to be successful, giving me positive feedback, giving me negative feedback, toughening me up, and then my own work on myself with going through personal development stuff, and, and then just kind of realizing it. I mean, it wasn't like an epiphany, I'm saying it took years, right?
Right.
And then so the second half to the answer to your question is I would say a couple of years after we started coaching, for first Reese and a EA around 2010, I'm listening to some of my clients, and they're like, it started to be like Groundhog's Day on our coaching calls. How'd your week go? Great. Tell me how you did on your prospecting. I didn't do it. How come? It's rarely I'm afraid of the phone. It's I got too busy, or this came up or that came up and they made everything a priority, or I didn't think about it, and so it would happen over and over and over again. And I'd be like, well, first I'd be like encouraging, then I would be, be firm and,
carrot stick, everything, right?
Nothing would work. And so then I'm like, so I started doing studying. And then I started going through some stuff for myself. And then I'm like, wow, this is like, it's all starting to come together for me. And so Brian O'Neill, one of our coaching clients, I'm like, okay, look, I'm just going to do this. So, and Brian, he's a firefighter. He's been a firefighter for 21 years. Like, he's gone in and out of burning buildings. He's saved people's lives on the sidewalk. I mean, he's gone in and out of buildings multiple times.
Right.
You've seen his tattoos. He's got all these tribal tattoos, which probably killed to get put on. And then I get, okay, we got a prospect. We got to start calling people. He's like, mm-mm. I go, what do you mean, mm-mm? He's like, I can't pick up the phone. Well, it's not a can't, it's a won't. I'm like, dude, you walk into burning buildings for 21 years and you can't pick up something that weighs 8 ounces? He's like, no. I'm like, okay. And I said, so, we're going to do a couple things. First of all, Tony Robbins talks about this references, right? Like, there's times in our past, like, look, you were a great golfer, right? And maybe you still are a great golfer, but I knew you were a really good golfer. You had a job at a country club, what I'm saying? So, you were probably a scratch golfer at one point in your life, or very close to it. So you've had a lot of success there, and that, the amount of time and energy that needs to go into that. Like, Tiger Woods isn't great because he's a great athlete. He's great because he, putts 1,000 balls a day, right? So the whole point is you've got a reference of, what's that?
I said he put more work in than anybody.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but you understand what happens is when you put the work in and increase those skill sets and the muscle memory, you get better. So you have the reference of what it takes to become great at something in yourself,
yes.
Right?
Yep.
So he had it too. Just he was a fireman. So the combination of helping him tap into that and then taking him through the process that I take people through, within 45 days he was prospecting regularly, and I would say within his first week he picked up a listing for $540,000. And the guy's a builder, and he's got like 2 or 3 more houses to sell, which would he have never gotten. And every time we get on the phone, I'm like, how's your prospecting going? It's been great. Like, what do you got going on? And his business is up like $40,000 in GCI over last year. So, I mean, and I just told him what to do. We had to do the work, what I'm saying? But it's possible for anybody. And that's kind of the genesis of where I got to where I am today. And since I've helped a lot of people, so
yeah, and I know, and man, I would love if you don't mind walking through kind of, and let's use Brian as a great case study as an example.
Sure.
Let's walk through kind of that process, how you help Brian,
mm-hmm.
who's a stud of a man,
mm-hmm.
right?
That
has this block, and how you were able to help him. What's that process to work through? Because I know a lot of people listening in, on with us and that will listen to this in the future,
mm-hmm.
Could really definitely benefit from your help. And so let's use Brian as an example. Let's just walk through exactly what you did with Brian. Right. And then, I think that'll really give a lot of value and help people.
Are we able to take questions on this today too, or no? Do people ask questions?
They can post questions in the comments.
Okay.
And then, for anybody listening in, there'll be some way to connect with Wally directly at the end of the call. Before we jump off, we'll share your contact information outside of just hitting you straight up on social media.
Right.
So yeah, let's walk through what you did for Brian.
Okay. Brian's an EXP guy, by the way, so this does work for EXP agents, just so you know. So anyway, so here's the thing: can't solve a problem that you're not aware of, right?
100%.
Yeah, if you don't know what's the doctor comes in and he or she, they diagnose you. Like, if you don't come in and say, I have a headache, and they go, here, take aspirin. They're like, inside your head, outside your head, top of your head. They diagnose, and so they create awareness for the problem. So the first thing is you got to become aware of where the problem is. And some things we forget or push down so far deep inside of us that we can't even remember them. So I did some research on this, and I found out that you can actually talk to your subconscious and it will listen to you. Sounds really corny, but you have to remember your subconscious has remembered everything you've eaten, tasted, smelled, seen, and felt. All of it's in there. Some people have incredible recall. Some people don't have good recall. So if you can't remember what happened to you when you were a child, and actually, for me, I had to talk to my aunt. I talked to my Aunt Pat because, she was my mother's sister. I'm like, hey, can you just tell me a little bit about this and tell me a little bit about that? And she told me all these things. And I was like, wow, that makes a lot of sense now. Like, I couldn't figure out why I had such an addiction to food, but my aunt's like, your dad used to punish you and put you to bed without food for months on end, it's funny, I don't like mashed potatoes either. And I don't remember I was told this, but I know not why. I was playing with my mashed potatoes in my high chair when I was 3 or 2. And my dad told me not to play with the mashed potatoes, and I did. So he filled my entire hand with mashed potatoes, and he mushed it in my hair and my face. So, he probably thought it was funny, and it may have been funny, but, I hate mashed potatoes, and I believe for every second that's why I don't like them. So I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. Anyway, so awareness is the first part. So if you don't remember because it has to do with something that happened. Again, either someone told you something or did something to you, or you made a decision about who you were and what your belief systems are and what your identity was from looking at other situations and determining about yourself. Okay. Yeah. So like bullying is a big reason. Bullying is a lot of reason for a lot of people to have sales call reluctance, just because of the trauma. Because not only is it mean, but it's we're looking at these bullies and we're literally judging ourselves and creating beliefs about ourselves about not being a good person, because we give them so much credence and we shouldn't. You know what I mean? It'd be great to teach kids that. My mom was like, "Oh, they're only teasing you because they like you." I'm like, you need to come to school, sister, because that ain't it. You know what I'm saying?
Kids are mean, bro.
Yeah, middle school.
Kids are mean, man. And hey, yeah. I know, man. I went to MacArthur. East Side of Lawton, brother. I know.
Yeah, was it? It's like middle school's like Darwin's testing ground, right? Survival of the fittest. If you can get out of middle school, you can get out of anything.
Yeah.
So
if you can get out of L, if you can get out of the L, you can get it.
If you can get out of the L, you should become president. So good point. Anyway, so you can talk to your subconscious. So if you don't know from whence these traumas or these hidden identities happened, all you have to do is get a 5x7 index card and say, hey, what is the origin or what is the cause of my sales call reluctance? Question mark. And just keep it with you and ask yourself that, and ask yourself that, and ask the question, ask the question, and then before you go to bed, do a little work behind it, and then it's going to come to you. And then
I absolutely love that. I just want to emphasize how powerful that is for everybody listening in, what Wally just shared, right? And because once we create an awareness, then now we have a choice, and we can choose to do something about it, or we can choose not to. The choice is yours. And so I love that. If you create, that works with anything in our life, right? Once we have an awareness, now we have a choice, and what do we want to do about it? And so I love that exercise. So all of you guys listening in, step one, ask the question and create the awareness to be able to then uncover what choices we have to move forward.
And so I want to, and thank you for that clarification. Or here's the thing, by the way, sales call reluctance is not anybody's fault. It's not our fault. It's not like you did something to make it happen. You know what I'm saying? It happened upon you, or you created it, but it's not your fault. But it is your job to make it go away. Right. So like awareness. So basically the first part is awareness. Let's figure out what it is. And then, Rick Carson wrote a book called Taming Your Gremlin. Great book. And, what he says is, you got to identify who your gremlin is and identify what that picture looks like. He wants you to give your gremlin a name.
Hey, there might be some younger folks listening in. You need to tell them what a gremlin is.
Yep. Don't give it food or water after midnight. So anyway,
that's right.
But basically gremlin is basically that part of you that says, hey, don't put yourself out there. Let's not make any changes. If you do that, then bad things are going to happen. And that voice that keeps us telling ourselves that we're not good. And so, so the second part is to define it. Once you find out what it is, define it. Talk about what the feelings feel like. I'm saying, what does it do to you? Really get your head around what that that issue is. Once you become aware of it, give it a picture, identify it. If you have to give it a name.
So let's go back to our case study with Brian. And you don't have to get into anything personal or whatever, but like how does that relate to for him? How did that kind of going through and given that meaning, like what were the feelings or what was uncovered without, divulging, any personal information?
I mean, in short, he just, he hadn't really connected the dots between, what he said to me is this. He says, listen, I care about the people that I save and help, but I don't care about them so much that I continue to think about them when I leave. Like I get there, it's a job to do, and in the way you got to be kind of disconnected, right? You got to care, but you also got to be focused on the fact that you're putting your life on, so he had gotten to the point where he was so disconnected from it that he didn't realize that he could do the same thing with people on the phone. And so he was giving a lot of care to what people were thinking about him on the phone when he called them, but he really wasn't giving any care to the people. Not that he wasn't giving care, he just didn't care so much that he worried about what they thought about him. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's awesome.
Right?
Yeah,
that's great. Yeah, he's like, look, if somebody's in a burning building, if they don't like me, I don't care. I'm going to put them on my shoulder. I'm going to carry them out, put them on the sidewalk, give them oxygen mouth to mouth. But I'm on the phone with these people. Oh my God, it's a totally different thing. And he convinced himself that, that he was going to get rejected or whatever. So, by connecting the dots there, and he did that himself from our conversation, by connecting the dots, he said it was a huge thing for him,
So he did the work, right? He was willing. He was willing to do the work.
You have to do the work. There's no way around
I love it.
And so, and so my gremlin, lazy, overweight, useless, doesn't follow through on anything, angry, loudmouth, that was, and those are the things like nobody wants to deal with that person. Nobody wants to be around that person. You know what I'm saying? So you got to go ahead and define it. Okay. And you got to realize what you're fighting, right? So let's become aware of it. Let's realize what we're fighting. What feelings are we fighting? What belief systems are we fighting? Because you can get your head around it there. And then the third part of it is mindfulness, and basically letting it pass. And this is the hardest part of it, really, because you've got to get to the point where when whatever it is that happens that enters your brain that causes the sales call reluctance, you've got to get to the point where you can just let it pass. Where you can go, hey, there's that. Oh, there it goes. And so there's a page on YouTube called The Mindful Movement, and it's a couple who have recorded thousands of hours of mindful meditations, and some of them are as short as 5 minutes, and some of them are 2 hours long. And they have mindful meditations for anxiety, for depression, and stuff like that. But basically, the long and short of it is it teaches you how to become mindful and be in the moment and be present with what's going on rather than thinking about the future or thinking about the past. And so start off with 5 minutes. I'm up to the point where I can do probably a half hour now, but it takes a while. But basically what they do is hey, let's just focus on your breathing, feel it coming in. They're talking to you, you're listening to some music, and then it says every time a thought comes in, just say thought and then let it pass. Thought, let it pass. And for a while, it feels like you're on the Autobahn. You know what I'm saying? Because it's going, because our minds have not been trained. Like usually our minds get thousands of messages every day, and we just keep letting things come in and out and out and out. Half the stuff we don't even take for checking. So, but once you can do that, then what happens is you're like, okay, oh, there's that feeling, sweaty palms, dry mouth, beating heart, upset stomach, lightheaded, or whatever feeling it is. You're like, okay, stop. Let's be mindful. Let's be in the moment here. Okay, that's just a feeling. None of that stuff is true. Those are just words. Those are just thoughts. None of that stuff is true. I'm not worthless. I am worth something. I deserve success, right? And so that'll be one of the parts. But basically, the whole point is you've got to get cognizant, and then when that happens, and it's hard at first, and it takes work, but you can do it.
So definitely some type of mindfulness practice really helps work through with this every day. So I love that resource. I've used the Headspace app for quite some time. I've got I just looked at my stats. I've got like 361 hours of total time.
Awesome.
But my average duration is 11 minutes, right? So
if you can get to like 30 minutes, an hour, and quite honestly, I think if you look back at all the marathon, the Ironman work you've done, a lot of that probably got put to good use, right? Because you were probably like, oh, that sucks, and you're like, one more mile, right? You start breaking those nice pieces, 10 steps, And so that's the first part of it. You got to get to the point where you can start tangling with that and then working on mindfulness. So the next part rolls into what we talked about here, my good pal, Hal Elrod, right?
Yeah.
Miracle morning, right? That is the recipe. Some people call it the 1800s, but quite honestly, Hal's the innovator for me. And, Hal's a great guy. I met him back in 2007, right, when he had just written Taking Life Head On, and super, super guy, as you know. And that is the true recipe for reprogramming your brain. Because now that we know what the problem is, and we know what we're up against, and we know how to start letting it pass, now we've got to get to the point where we're reprogramming everything that's happening. We've got to rip out all those negative plants and weeds that are in there, and we got to replant stuff. So, right, he's got his sabers. So silence, you got to meditate. So mindful meditation. Affirmations. And affirmations, they've proven are probably more powerful than anything, right? Because, you ever met somebody who's afraid of snakes and has never seen a snake before? Tons of them, right? People are afraid of heights, never been up in a high place before. Because your brain, your subconscious believes whatever you want to tell it, right? So That's why we got to say affirmations. We got to say them in the present. We've got to say them without looking in the rearview mirror. Now that I've lost this weight, I'm never going to, listen, I'm healthy, I'm trim, what I'm saying? Visualization, got to see it. Kinder wrote a $10 million check for himself. It was sitting above his desk forever.
On his desk every day, right there above it.
Yep. So you got to visualize yourself as being who you want to be or doing what you want to be. Picking up the phone, having good conversations, collecting a commission check from having picked the phone up and call somebody. And also other things maybe that are not necessarily connected with phone sales call reluctance, but opinions of yourself and beliefs about yourself, right? E is exercise. You can never get enough endorphins inside you. Epinephrine, norepinephrine, adrenaline, all good stuff for your brain. And then ER is writing, right? So journaling.
Reading.
No, reading. Sorry, it's reading. And then the last one is scribing. So yeah, reading. Got to put new stuff into your brain. You got to read stuff. And it's not like, you're not reading. This is not a nonfiction read. This is 10 minutes of something that's going to inspire you, that's going to help your brain grow. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I wouldn't start off with You Can't Hurt Me. That's probably a little strong. I'd probably go to something like Think and Grow Rich and work my way up to that. Because I got that on Audible, so you get the full force because he gets interviewed at the end of every chapter, and it's impactful.
Powerful.
Yeah, and then
if Compound Effect is another great one. If you're looking for
perfect, yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Atomic Habits is basically the compound effect for habits, basically. So
it's fantastic.
Right? Yep. And so the last one is scribing, and it's funny how many I've written millions of words in my lifetime. I've ghostwritten books. I've written white papers. I've written email. I've written everything you can possibly write. You know what I'm saying?
Fantastic copywriter. Fantastic.
That is undeserved, but thank you. But the whole point is here's the thing. Like, I do not like journaling, but I have to force myself to do it. And the reason I force myself to do it is journaling requires you to think about what's going on in your head and get it out of your head and take a look at it. You know what I'm saying? But you have to get it out of your head, because if it stays in your head and spins around, that's why I wish there was corners in our brain, because at least something could get stuck, right? But it's around, man. Going around and around.
I got enough stuff going on. I can't carry that shit around.
Right? Yeah. So we have to journal so we can get it out of ourselves, so we can make peace with it, right? I'm going to give you a quick getting unoverwhelmed trick. We get overwhelmed very easily. This is the best strategy I've ever gotten. Okay, you're super overwhelmed. Like the conscious brain can only really deal with like 2 to 5 thoughts at any given time. Once you get over 5, you start creating loops, and sometimes they're negative loops. And if you've ever had a day where you felt like you're saying the same thing over and over to yourself, like the same 4 or 5 things. So when you do that, you're overwhelmed, and then you can't think straight. You get frustrated. So here's what you do. You sit down, and then you start writing, and you write without prejudice. I don't care. I'm too fat. I don't have enough money. I got to get this done, this done, this done. Needed this for my wife, for my kids. You just write the whole list down. Brain dump. Empty your brain, and then look at it. And then you give it a 1, 2, or a 3. Do I have to do this right now? Can it wait a week? Can it wait a month? And then you just go ahead and you just label it, and then you go, okay, I'm just going to take care of all the ones right now. And you would not believe the freedom that gives you, okay? But the reason we journal and write things down is because we can't contain it all in our head, right? So you have to journal. You got to get it out of your head and onto paper so you can look at it, so you can make sense with it, so you can come to peace with it in some cases. Like sometimes, people I have to see it to believe it, Write it down and see it, then you can believe it. So anyway, so that his whole process is really the next step.
That's awesome.
Right?
That's awesome.
We've really got to start reprogramming and telling ourselves a new story, right? And it has to be consistent every day. Because up until whoever you old are today and whenever what happened, you've been doing the same thing, just in the negative side of things. I'm no good. I don't deserve things. I hate myself. People don't like me. People aren't going to work with me. I'm not, you know what I'm saying? Now, you're not saying it out loud. You may not even be saying it cognitively, but in the background, your brain is, it's saying all that stuff. Yep. So then after that, there's 2 more parts of the process. So, Daniel Pink talks about what drives us. And he said a lot of us are, driven by carrots and sticks. And he says carrots and sticks are not good drivers. And the main reason is because they eventually either you don't reach them and you get frustrated, or you reach them and there's nothing after them. Or you do it to avoid pain, but then you find out the pain isn't so bad, so it's not as good of a motivator, right? So he talks about the X-type personality and the I-type personality, extrinsically driven and intrinsically driven. So he says we need to be driven by things like competency, mastery, autonomy, things that we have control over. I'm saying that we're going to improve who we are. So rather than trying to do something from it, how can I become a master at something? Because when you can master something, there's nothing anybody can do. When you're autonomous and you can not when I say autonomous that you don't need other people, but when you can create the life you want and it's 100% within your control and you take advantage of that, So he's all about mastery and autonomy, competency. So you've got to get to the point where you got to figure out what drives you, right? And you got to think about for instance, let's use EXP. What do I have to do? Well, I've got to master two things. I've got to master scripts and dialogues and I've got to master the real estate sales process so I can become autonomous, right? And then I've got to master how to recruit so that I can go ahead and teach other people how to recruit so I can become autonomous, right? And so those are the two big ones right there. And so there's a third one and I always forget it. I need to write it down. And then the last part is, really finding out what drives you. So, what's his name? Simon Sinek, right?
Start with why.
Why? Really written for businesses, lots of good messages in there. So he wrote one called Find Your Why, which is for business people and for single people. For individuals. Great book. I'm going to boil it down to something really simple. There's two things. He says, number one, your why is not a thing, right? His whole process is what, how, why. So what is the what? Your kids, not a what. Car, not a what. House, not a what. $1 million in the bank, boat, whatever it is. Not a why. So none of those things are why. Your kids, right? Those are all whats. A why needs to be something that's, and you said in most cases, a why is based in fear. So it's not in fear, probably it's based in pain. So we have a pain in our past that we never want to experience again, right? And then the second thing is it's got to be something that can be acted upon for you to influence. So it's usually born in pain, like something we dealt with that was painful that, like for instance, for me, like especially for my kids, my kids, they know how to protect themselves and they know I will protect them. My kids know that they don't need another human being in their life to make them feel valued. My kids know that I'm proud of them just for the people they are. They don't have to do one thing to be proud of them. They know that they don't need to go to anybody else to be loved. I talk to my 14-year-old daughter and I'm saying, hey, if you ever meet a guy, you just need to know that, you don't need another man to make you feel like a woman and feel loved. She goes, Dad, you've already told me this. So I'm like, okay, good. So all the things that caused me pain as a child, I made sure my children have to do that. You know what I'm saying? And so that's one of my whys. So it's not a what, it's a why. So number one, it's rooted in pain. And number two, you have to be able to act on it. It's got to be something you can change, right? So as far as your kids are concerned, your kids aren't your why. It's creating an amazing life for them. That's your why. It's helping them so they can be amazing adults. It's teaching them how to be resilient when they're older. It's leaving them a huge truckload of cash so they can have a much more comfortable life as children than you did. Your car is not your why. It's what the need meets that. The sense of accomplishment that you would get from it, or the sense of meeting your need for significance or whatever, right? So it's real simple. The basic why formula is I'm going to contribute X so that I can impact Y, right? I'm going to do this so that I can impact that, right? So
yeah.
Saying your kids is a why is a great thing, noble, and I love it, but like it's not the why
it's not
is
true.
Yeah, so my kids are the what, the how. I work my tail off so I can basically make sure that they are set for life so they never have to worry about money for the rest of their life. And so my why is I'm going to do everything I can every day to work as hard as I can, as smart as I can to give them the best life that I can. So that would be your why, right?
Contribution to impact, right?
Yeah,
and also, and as you know, Holly and I talk about this all the time, right? And what she really helped me even understand that as well is also like, what are you really good at, right? Because you have that like you said, that pain that you have that understanding
mm-hmm.
at such a level to make that contribution, to be able to give, to have that impact, right? Mm-hmm. That gives you the fulfillment. So like what you're sharing there, you're sharing from, your pain and experience that you're going to contribute to have the impact because it gives you the most fulfillment. And so I love being able to, that really helped me understand that at a deeper level. And so when I was listening to you share that, I was like, okay, because that gives them the most fulfillment.
I saw you go away for a second. I was looking at your eyes and I saw you go away for a second. I was like, holy cow, that really just hit him in the head. So
I was thinking through that.
yeah. So this is important. Okay. And this is why, like, I'm like, what's your why? They're like, oh, my kids, or, I want to make a lot of money, and this is why the extrinsic driver is not so good, because it's so easy to lose sight of, because if it doesn't come quickly enough, then we get bored or we don't feel like it's going to work. And if it happens, then what do we do afterwards, right? What's the transcendental part of it? Because goals need to transcend goals. And so I'm going to put this in the terms of recruiting, right? EXP, easily a great model, right? Excellent model, okay? The money is there for the taking. The lifestyle is there for the taking. But you know what? Brent Gove, Cliff Freeman, Daniel Beer, Kyle Whistle, Jay Kinder, Albie, Mike, people who are making a truckload of money on this. It's been almost 5 years, right? It's taken them 5 years of working towards that to happen, right? I mean, basically
you could even argue it was 15 years before that.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
That led to that opportunity. That's what I always say about Jay. It didn't happen 3 years ago for Jay. It was the 15 years of him just adding massive value back to the real estate community.
Right. No question. Right. Scott Bolch, his subtitle on his name, he says chief executive officer says 10-year overnight success. Yeah. So, but anyway, so the whole point is certainly the relationships were key, but he still had to take action. And it's like 5 years of picking up the phone, calling, doing videos, meeting with people, like everybody. And so that's why your why needs to be so freaking strong. Like people come in because they want the money, they want the lifestyle, they want the residual income. They want to be able to not have to work if they don't want to work. You know what I'm saying? But they come in, they don't understand what their why is. They don't have a strong enough why. They don't know what drives them, right? So those are huge, important components of making sure that you get through that. And so this whole process that we talked about, you can apply to anything. So if you sense fear or trepidation in anything, you can go through this process and work through it, right? And look, it's not a one-day thing. It's not a one-week thing. I mean, Tony Robbins, I think he differentiates between like exposure and then getting, what's the word I'm looking for here? Exposure and then getting, I don't know, I forget the word. I'll have to remember. But basically, where you just, where basically you get involved on a consistent basis. And I'm forgetting the word here, which is, rare. But basically, exposure is, hey, I found out about it. That's great. But then how do I just basically stay involved on a consistent basis? How do I, and that's by reading and all the stuff that, we talked about with the Miracle Morning exercises. So get aware. Let's find out exactly where it came from. Could be one thing, could be four things, I mean, I've got addiction to food, sex, pornography, and money. You know what I'm saying? So I had 4 things that I found out about it that I had to work on. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm like, I've definitely conquered 2. One of them I'm about halfway through, and then the last one, is the one that's been the hardest. You know what I'm saying? Because 2 reasons. Number one, it's the one that started the earliest. And the second thing is that as you let go of your coping mechanisms, what I'm saying, that makes harder. Yeah. Like, I'll give you a perfect example. I don't want to get out too far off base here, but I was on The Biggest Loser in 2006. Lost about 116 pounds. I was one of the 11 people that lost over 100 pounds. Worked my hiney off. Literally looked like a different person. And the minute, and I'm not saying like the second. So they weighed us the night before the show, and we all went in there and got weighed. And I'm telling you, as soon as I stepped off the scale, I went and got someone's car and I borrowed it, and I drove from where I was, and I forget where we were, but anyway, so I drove from wherever we were to the In-N-Out outside of LAX, and I sat down and ate a bunch of In-N-Out food. Like, I'm talking like an unhealthy, unnecessary amount of food. Because basically it was in my mind, I was like, okay, we can go back to being who we were before, So, so now I'm doing the things I'm supposed to be doing and the things that I'm teaching. It just takes some time. So here's what I'd say to anybody who's watching this here today. Wherever you are, if you're afraid to pick up the phone, you're afraid to get on video, you're afraid to call your past clients in the sphere, you're afraid to, do your recruiting for EXP, the changing that is completely in your control. And I'm not talking like months and months and months. If you do the work, I'm talking like 8 weeks. Everybody I worked with so far, the longest it's taken was 8 weeks because they did the work. And now look, does that mean you're going to be like, woohoo, 8 weeks and it'll never happen again? No. You've got to work on it. And then you're going to have to continue to work on it. What I'm telling you, in 6 to 8 weeks, you can get to the point where that stuff, when it bothers you, you can make peace with it and continue to move forward and do what you need to do. And if you keep working, it'll change your life forever.
It will, 100%. I mean, yeah, it really is. And I want to make sure, everybody connects with you. And I know if they go over to Phone Sales Secrets, you have a video series that you walk them through what you just shared in a little bit more detail, right? I know we were the crash course on this call. But you can, if you guys want to dive a little bit deeper, a little more time and unpack each of those steps that Wally shared. PhoneSalesSecrets.com. I went through it. It's amazing.
Thank you.
So definitely I recommend you guys all going through it. Even if you feel you're pretty solid on it. I mean, there's always learning, right? Always trying to improve and get better. And going through that video series that you put together is fantastic. And then obviously
no cost, by the way. No,
it doesn't cost anything.
No cost.
100% value.
Yep. And so here's the thing, so can I just say one more thing?
Yes, sir.
Just kind of hearkening back to what you said earlier. Like, now you know. You know what I'm saying? It's like, and look, there are people who are legitimate victims in this world, and I completely understand that. And I understand how being a victim can truly impact your life negatively. But, now that there's a way to move beyond it, you need to do something about it if you want things to change. And look, I'm not a licensed therapist or anything. I'm no genius. So, you may uncover stuff that may require you to go talk to somebody who can do more for you than I can do. But the majority of people I work with so far have been able to help. Sure. Anything else?
No, man, it's definitely a powerful comversation, and I really greatly appreciate you, jumping in, being you, being vulnerable, being authentic, and coming from a place of contribution and just adding massive value as always. Like I said, you've definitely impacted, mine and Holly's life, and
you guys have impacted mine.
So really appreciate you, and thank you again, and all of you guys listening in. Make sure you guys give Wally the biggest thing that you guys can do to give Wally the love that he deserves is go to PhoneSalesSecrets.com, go through the course, and just with his give, and I know it'll impact your life.
All right, man,
brother. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody who's watched. Thank you.
We'll see you guys on the next episode.
Take care.